Welcome back to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast, proudly presented by Venture Hunting and Outdoors. If you're like us and passionate about hunting, spearfishing, and many other outdoor-related pursuits, with an eagerness to fast-track your learning, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome back, legends, to another episode of the Twin Elements podcast. Today, you've got Ayden and James Doumtsis as your hosts, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into all the gear that we're going to be using in Montana. So as you're listening to this, Ayden and I are already over there, hopefully getting amongst a few pronghorn, elk, and mule deer, and we just wanted to share with you all the gear that we're using. So we're going to be talking about our new hoyt bows and their setups. We're going to be talking about what arrows and broadhead combinations we're going to be running, going through from what we're wearing on our feet all the way up to our layering systems with new camo gear, as well as what's in our packs for a general day pack or some of the backpacking gear for our sleep system, as well as a few extra items that we've thrown in there just for some comfort, but also obviously some extra things like calling for elk and that type of thing. We'll also be answering one of our frequently asked questions from one of you listeners, which we do on every podcast. So if you guys have a question you'd like us to answer on the podcast, please send us an email at info@twinelements.com.au with the subject line FAQ, or equally, you can send us a message on Instagram at one of the following accounts: Twin Elements, Ayden Doumtsis Outdoors, or James Doumtsis Outdoors, and we will answer that on a future podcast. So let's dive into that backpack and we'll let you know what gear we use.
Venture Hunting and Outdoors is Australia's premier hunting retailer. Venture started from a team of passionate hunters with the mission to give Australian hunters the resource they deserve. Through community events, top quality gear, exclusive deals, and expert guidance, Venture is more than a hunting store. It's a community. Check out their incredible mega store in Brisbane today, or head to their website to shop all things hunting and outdoors. So one of the most exciting changes ahead of this USA trip is James and I both have a new set of hoyt bow hunting or archery bows, which is absolutely amazing. Both of us are shooting up around that 80 pounds, which is a bit of an increase compared to what we're used to. But with the better let off, smoother cams and all that type of stuff on these hoyt carbon RX9s, it's absolutely awesome to be able to pull these bows back, sit pretty comfortably, and then be able to send an arrow down range and just watch how zippy they are. So I'm running just the regular hoyt carbon RX9, whilst James with the bigger draw length is running the Ultra. So that's pretty much the only real difference between our setups. We had these bows recently set up by Dustin from Venture Hunting, and Dustin is a wealth of knowledge. He helped us with getting our draw lengths right, making sure all the bows were tuned, paper tuned, went through everything from setting up our sights and hamski rests and all that type of stuff to make sure that we're ready and hopefully successful over in the USA. So I guess this is a bit of a plug here for Dustin and Venture Hunting. If you're in that Brisbane sort of greater surrounding area, down there in southeastern Queensland, make sure you head into Venture Hunting, and if you're an archer or want to get into bow hunting, go and get your bow set up. Dustin's got some strings down there that are absolutely awesome, and just all round a really good setup and experience down there at Venture Hunting. We were able to shoot the bows out to about 25 metres in the store. They've got their own little range there, and then basically once you walk in, you go past all the mounts and everything like that, all the gear, all the rifle stuff, and head upstairs. There's this whole second floor of the Venture Hunting Springwood store, and basically from there it's just an archer or bow hunter's dream, where there's just got gear, everything from sights, stabilizers, all the way through to shafts and things like that there in the store for you to check out.
So this year with our sights, we're going to be jumping into the option 4 sight as well as using the option quiverizer. So specifically about the option 4 sight, the thing that really drew me to it was with calling in animals like red deer or elk and that type of thing, often you've got an animal that's at 40 meters and 30 meters and 20 meters. With the option 4 sight, you've got that added benefit where you've got the 3 pins at the top, which we've set up, Ayden and I, as 20, 30 and 40. But you've also got that bonus fourth pin slider. So if you've got a bedded mule deer out at 35 meters, for example, you can dial it straight into 35 and have that shot. Or equally, if you're calling in something and it's, quickly run in, it's not like you've set your pin to 40 and then all of a sudden it's at 20, or it's at 20 and it turns and gives you a shot at 40. You've got your pins there. And for me personally, I've always struggled with shooting and had a bit of target panic. And I don't know, I find the horizontal pins off changing from a vertical pin, single pin, I find it a lot easier to actually hold it steady on the target. So I've really been enjoying having that and being able to line that up, and really enjoyed shooting the option sight. I don't know if it's just this new bow, but shooting and feeling very confident out to 60 with field tips and broadheads for this upcoming trip, which has been a fair while for me, speaking personally, with my gear, that sort of shooting. So really looking forward to this trip to come. We've also got the Hamsky rest there. Ayden and I have also been running that for a couple of years now. I think they're just a very well-designed rest. That's the Epsilon. The main thing I like is sort of the 360 dome or covering where the arrow can't fall out, as well as the rest design where it's very hard for it to fall off the rest, and just feel very secure and confident, knowing that you're going to throw that arrow in there and going to be able to sort of run and gun, do your spot and stalk, and not be worried about the arrow not only falling out for one, but also just falling off the rest itself. It's just such a distant thought now, and it's come a long way since those rests that we used a couple of years ago, where you're constantly having to almost hold the arrow on the rest, and be concerned when you should be looking at whatever you're stalking or anticipating their next move or planning your next move. Just a lot of peace of mind in using these Epsilon Hamsky rests. So definitely recommend them, and great for tuning and stuff like that. Like, have to do a couple of little touches out in the field, and it's very easy for tuning and micro tuning. So it's been an absolute pleasure to use on these new bows.
I guess it's worth also mentioning that we haven't necessarily swapped from Hoyt or back and forth with any other brands. Both James and I, if you've been watching all of our YouTube videos, have been shooting the Hoyt Carbon RX1 and Hoyt Carbon RX1 Ultra, which both of these bows launched back in 2018, and we've been hunting with them obviously now for the last 7 years pretty consistently, shooting everything from most of the deer species here in Australia all the way through to rabbits, foxes, pigs, goats, bangtang, buffalo, and then obviously elk and things like that, things like tahr over in New Zealand and on these overseas and international hunts. So the Hoyt bows have been an absolute winner for us. And again, we have to say a massive thank you to Hoyt for sending us out the Carbon RX9s, purely because we were a little bit begrudgingly up to upgrade, I guess. Those bows have been so good for us over the last 7 years that I've actually been shooting the RX1 the last few weeks here getting ready for the USA. And I was a little bit nervous to transition over to the new bow, but then as soon as we got it set up and were shooting it, and just watching basically how much faster, I think, and maybe a bit quieter, probably because of the new strings and things that are on there, this new Hoyt Carbon RX9 punches, like my arrow and broadhead setup is just sort of, very noticeable. I remember making a bit of a remark when we were there in the store and getting them set up and just said, like, I'm pretty excited to basically shoot a bull elk and hopefully get it pinned to a pine tree in the background because the arrows are slamming through the target that fast. And it's excited to go into this trip with all, I guess, just building on that confidence that we've got from our bows over the last few years. So we may as well jump into what shafts and broadheads and things like that we're shooting out of these bows. And if you've been listening for the last little while, we've swapped to day 6 shafts in the last 6 months. I'm personally shooting the 275 HD shafts, which are a bit of a hybrid shaft spine-wise between the 250 and 300 that I've been typically shooting in the past. And I'm really enjoying the performance of those. A total arrow weight for me is around that 560 grain mark, and James, with the longer draw length and a bit more arrow length, is coming in at around 610 grains. So that's sort of the day 6 shafts that we're using there, and I'm sure James can talk to the Cayuga broadheads that we've got up front.
So we've got a bit of a disparity here in the Doumtsis tribe about what broadhead from Cayuga is the best. I know Ayden's had a lot of success with the Zot and really loves the Zot. He's shooting 150 grain there. Whereas for me, I have been running the pilot cuts with the bleeders, just the standard bleeders, 150 grain. So I think it works out at roughly 164, 170 grain. And just really loved them. Like the damage that you get with these pilot cuts really does have to be seen to be believed. It really is like no other broadhead I've ever used before. And at 610 grain, it is a little bit heavier, but interestingly enough, like what Ayden was saying, with these new Hoyt bows, like we're making jokes in the shop, like they hit like Thor's hammer, like these things. 610 grain. I think mine was spitting arrows out at 268 feet per second. Just and absolutely smoking the target. Like I was lucky enough to be in Sydney a couple of weeks ago and did the St. Mary's indoor shoot. And often, like they've got great targets there, but often my arrow was going like straight through and zipping out the other side, or, just getting that maybe 5 or 6 even more inches of penetration than a lot of the guys that were there. Probably a bit lighter shaft, bit lighter arrow, and maybe a bit less poundage, but they were absolutely thumping out of these bows. And similar to Ayden, like very excited to go and hopefully shoot a couple of critters with them and just see what the damage does, especially with that big pilot cut up front with the bleeders. I think it's going to be an absolutely awesome hole, and very excited to put all this gear through the test.
As far as release aid goes, we do get this as a bit of a question quite often, and James is using a Scott Ascent, which is a hinge. He's cut it down to one finger. I guess he can actually talk to that here in a second, just as to why he's gone and done that. And then I'm actually shooting a Carter Evolution thumb release. And for me personally, the biggest reason why I did that was I was just having a little bit of, I guess, issues with target panic a couple of years ago. Just shooting and growing up with, those pretty much what we call trigger releases, where it's strapped around your wrist and then it comes off a main little bit of a bar, and there's this almost like a rifle trigger coming out horizontally. We'd always shot them. I'd shot them for quite a while, purely just because you could always get a shot away as needed, and you didn't have to go through a particularly like a draw cycle and then a shot sequence and things like that. And just for hunting, I really, really like them. And I think if I hadn't have developed a bit of target panic, I'd still probably be shooting it. But then for whatever reason, got this Carter Evolution thumb release, and I just found that you still can squeeze off the shot as you want, because for me it's as simple as just removing my thumb from the button. But as long as I'm holding that down, there's no way that it's going to go off. And I find that by being able to just hold it down and kind of pull back and keep pulling back through my back muscles, eventually my wrist and my thumb is sort of squeezing so far backwards that my thumb almost just wants to like slide off very gently off that release. And I find that when I get to that point, and in the same time I'm simultaneously, I guess, holding my pin on wherever I want it to hit, and it's just you're focusing basically on where you want that pin to hit, knowing that in any second your thumb's going to give, and then you're basically going to be sending an arrow on its way. And for me, that's just resulted in tighter groups. And as James was saying at the start of the show, like we've been shooting out to 60 meters every day for the last couple of weeks, and I've never had as good shooting and groups with broadheads and field points, and everything just feels super locked in at the moment, which is really nice, especially coming from me where, when I sort of stopped shooting target as much, just because for whatever reason my body, once I got that pin anywhere near the dot, or it didn't matter if it was a big paper plate on a hay bale, as soon as there was some sort of perceived target that I had to shoot and that pin was floating anywhere near it, I'd just punch the shot. And it's been really nice to actually get away from that. And I credit this little Carter Evolution and switching up to the thumb release as a big part of that for me.
Yeah, very similar to Ayden. The one finger cut down Scott Ascent for me has been pretty much just due to my my target panic that I probably had. Like I've been using a hinge now for 6 years off a recommendation of good friend Brad Murphy, who I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. And that is purely just because I had, really bad target panic with the trigger release. Cost me a couple of animals at very close quarters due to probably shit technique as well, to be honest. But just having that one finger sort of cut down, it does really limit the amount of sort of like much you can just shoot and, roll that hinge out and just get a shot away. Like with the one finger, you do have a lot of sort of fine control. And it's just interesting. Like there's been so many guys that I know in the bow hunting community that, they're like, oh, you hunt with a hinge. And this has been going for a couple of years now. And it's crazy now to see how much the hinge has almost become almost fashionable, I'd say, with just the sort of the recognition of how many people struggle with target panic, especially with the trigger release. And how many of these guys, 4 or 5 years ago, were like, oh, you hunt with a hinge. And, now these guys are following suit and doing similar and also hunting with a hinge. Most of the guys I know at least train with a hinge or a back tension or that type of thing. And then a few of them go back and hunt with a trigger style release. But yeah, a lot of them are just hunting with a hinge too. And I think it is, if you're struggling with target panic, definitely a recommendation. Like go and get one, punch yourself in the face a couple of times first. Bit of a good wake up call there, and then figure out how to use it properly. And it does for me really help and tighten up my shooting. I can't think of how many times, I've been like, often you're like floating, and obviously it's not like, it's a bit of a surprise release every time. And how many times you're sort of floating on and off the target and stuff, and then it goes off, and you swear that you're like 5 inches or something, or 4 inches at 60 meters off, and and then you actually look and you're like, oh no, it was bang on. Like, so it's one of these weird things that just, for peace of mind and sort of your mental thought process, I guess, going into shooting and stuff, it changed everything for me. So can't recommend it more with using a hinge or a back tension or something like that than if you are struggling with target panic. So definitely something to check out.
The last few things, I guess, that we'll speak on relating to the bow and just gear that we're going to have loosely in our bow bags would be always a set of Allen keys. I've actually gone to the extent of carrying a couple of them in my binocular harness, but we just figured that we'd mention it here. Things like bow wax, just keeping the bow well maintained and looked after on these big trips, just because we're going to be out in the middle of nowhere, no shops or anything like that nearby, and that sort of, I guess, brings us to having, we've got new strings on the bows that aren't factory from Hoyt, but we're going to take the spare strings and peeps and all that type of stuff in case something does go wrong and we can find a bow press somewhere over in America and get that all done. The next thing to hopefully obviously avoid, needing a spare string and getting one cut would be a bowstring protector. We've just got one that, has little fiber sort of padded areas over the cams, and then a nice stretchy sort of fabric that protects those strings with little clips. And basically, not that you want to be, sitting anything sharp or broadheads or arrows or anything like that in the same vicinity of your bow or your strings, but it just, does mean that you can sort of, if the bow's ever on the backpack, you can have it strapped on with the string protector, and it makes a huge difference. And then just little things, mundane things like sight tapes for the option sights and whatever else you may need.
Cayuga broadheads. Where do I begin? Ayden and I have just absolutely taken to and love these broadheads. He's shooting the 150 grain Zots while I'm shooting the 150 grain pilot cuts with bleeders. There was no other head that I was going to run in Montana on my limited entry hunt than the pilot cut. And I was so happy when I took down the bull of a lifetime. We've teamed up with Cayuga to get 10% off your next order by using the code TWIN10 at checkout. That is TWIN, 10 the number at checkout to get 10% off your next order. So that's all going to fit very nicely in. Ayden and I are taking over our Hoyt payload rolling duffel bags. So they're quite a big bag, but as you would have hopefully heard on the previous podcast, with a lot of these international trips, you're only allowed one bag up to 31 kilos or 32 kilos, depending on your airline, worth of gear. So you want to have we used to have those like big square hard case bags, but we always struggled to fit enough gear in them, even just on domestic trips, let alone these international backpacking trips. And going up to one of these big rolling duffel bags was definitely a huge move for us and a great investment. They're not crazy expensive. Probably cost more in post getting them over here, but they are, incredible. Had them for a couple of years now. It lasts a long time, and you can just fit so much stuff in them. Honestly, probably too much stuff sometimes, especially on domestic hunts. But definitely worth checking out if you're getting into these international hunts, because you are going to need a big, very secure bag. And we've had absolutely no problems. It's been a dream traveling with that overseas.
So another massive change for us has been the Ebola stock packs, which James and I have been running for the last 6 months as well, which pretty much coincided perfectly with our 2025 red deer rut hunts, where we got to put these packs through the works hunting for nearly a month, which is going to be a pretty similar timeline to what we're doing or have planned here for the USA. So as part of this, James and I both got kitted out with the Vapor 5000 packs. We haven't actually used our Ebola stock bat wings, which are basically compartments that you add to the side of the backpack. We have been running the Ebola stock just hoods or lids, which basically we chuck a whole heap of gear in. I know for me particularly, rather than have to sift through, the main compartment of the pack, I chuck my things like, muesli bars, Garmin InReach, maybe a knife, those type of things that are virtually, essential that you want to be able to grab quite quickly or in a pinch. But what I really love about this whole setup is their load frame, which it's a bit of a L-shaped load frame, which I wasn't quite sure about at the beginning. And having a load frame on a pack is just something that I think is essential now for anyone hunting, whether it's for day packs or multi-day hunts, backpacking, whatever it may be. But one of the benefits of this load frame, and you'll honestly have to check it out, it's called the Main Frame by Ebola Stock, and it basically allows us to just zip our backpacks or the Vapor 5000 packs onto it, attach the hoods, all that type of stuff. And you've got this awesome interchangeable kit with so much versatility. But one thing that's really cool, especially for us, is that we can take our backpacks off and rather than have to sit it down and let it fall over or whatever, or lay it on the ground, because of this L and it's like a metal bar, it literally just sits down and keeps the backpack upright, which is so easy for us to then go and unzip and look through for camera gear and things in a pinch, or even when you're trying to find the backpack again, it's just, you might take it off for a bit of a stalk and travel 100 meters, 200 meters, shoot whatever you're trying to shoot or have a failed stalk. To be able to go and look for a pin drop as to where you drop the bag and not have to look for it in the long grass, but see it standing upright, is such a beneficial thing. And honestly, I'm thinking about it here, but for chittle deer guiding, the amount of times I've had with clients recently where, we've gone and shot a stag's down, I'm just walk a couple hundred meters back to the packs to get the water and, go and load up this deer basically. And they're like, how do you know where the pack is? I'm like, I can literally see it. It's 200 meters away up there. It's just leaning, upright by itself. And one of the other things that I really like about the load frame that I'm sure we'll get into here when we talk about, some of its benefits, is with that L that comes off the bottom there, that even if, you haven't strapped it down perfectly, it just takes away any margin for error and removes anything from, slipping down, I guess, is because it's got that L which acts as a bit of a safety net underneath where you basically put the quarter or a hind leg or something like that. And just having that, they're super easy to clean. But yeah, just that versatility. It's actually, I wasn't sure how, if I was going to enjoy it when I first saw it, but it's been one of the best packs I've ever used and really, really enjoy that L load frame.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. When I first saw that L, I was a bit skeptical. And honestly, it's probably the best feature I've ever used in a backpack. It blows your mind, how simple it is, even just packing for a hunt, or like Ayden was saying, you just take it off and it sits there. I'm looking in the corner of the room now and it's currently sitting there looking at us. And it makes everything so much easier. So that's definitely a huge feature. Another one with the previous backpacks I've had, backpacking backpacks, I think this Ebly stock for me is the most versatile backpack I've ever used in terms of clip design and also design of getting the bag off the frame. A lot of the other bags for backpacking I've used have had really elaborate sort of clips or Velcros and stuff, whereas this bag has a zip, a very heavy duty zip. And after talking to a couple of mates in the US that have been using an Ebly stock for a couple of years now, they've still got the same bags, using it all the time, hunting plenty, and have never had a problem with any of their zip. So it was a great reinforcement for us about how easy it is to get these bags on and off. And it just makes it so much easier. I'd use the main compartment a lot more and just dump a couple of back legs and back straps. a bit of ribs and stuff like that into the main bag, just because it took so long to get the actual bag off the mainframe. Whereas because it's so easy, and then you're just looking at doing a couple of clips up, the meat can't sag, like what Ayden was saying, because of the L shape. You pretty much just throw it in there, do 4 or 5 clips up, cinch it down tight, and you're away. Whereas previously you had to sort of chuck the meat in the main bag because you were too lazy, and then your bag gets bloody and you got to wash it and so on and so forth. Whereas just with the clip design and the easy zip on zip off for the bag, it's been absolutely a game changer for us. And I actually really like the straps at the front too for just tightening it up on your hip. A lot of the bags have it where you're sort of tightening away from yourself. And it's a bit awkward. You can't really like cinch it down super tight. Whereas, with these ones, they're almost like the inverse, and it's just made it really easy to get that pack, the waist belt, like really cinched down on your hips. And especially if you're carrying out a heavy load, like we had a fair few trips, carrying out red deer hindquarters and carrying out front legs and that type of stuff. Skulls during the rut, and it was an absolute dream. So really, really, really enjoying using that 5,000 Vapor with that L-shaped pack. It's been awesome for heavy loads as well as just training for this trip. And there's a lot of features on it that just make it, like, you can tell there's been a lot of design go into it to make it as practical as possible.
I think that's partly where I've been really impressed as well, is just how easy it is to, remove the Vapor 5000 pack and all the hood and the bat wings and everything from the actual load frame itself. I'll literally go from my house here, 5-10 minutes down the road, go into the gym, and on that main frame itself, just chuck it on, and I'll attach, 20 kilos, 25 kilos of weights, literally in the form of just big round plates. Go through 2 of those little holes on the weights with 1 or 2 straps, and know that it's cinched down. It's not slipping at all. It's not going to fall off as I'm doing the Stairmaster and cause damage to me, someone else, or, the gym facilities. And I have people looking at me going like, shit, what's that backpack? Looking at me going, there's weight vests over there. And I just say, yeah, but it's so easy. I can literally just clip 25 kilos on with two straps and get walking. And obviously do that for 25 minutes, half an hour, whatever it may be. And get ready for this USA trip. So that's been absolutely awesome. And then come time for me to do, a guided hunt later that week, I can be training that morning, literally go home with 2 zips and 2 little tiny clips, have my backpack fully set up, ready to go with, the lid and everything back on it. So super easy, super versatile, and absolutely, loving this Ebola stock setup personally.
Now, jumping directly into those fantastic backpacks, I think it's pretty important to talk about safety first. So Ayden and I both carry first aid kits, especially with tourniquets in them. I think it's really, really important to make sure you've got one of them, whether you're just a day hunter. We want to make sure everyone's getting home off the mountain. Tourniquet is obviously going to be one of these things that's going to save your life. In those first aid kits, we're going to have like Band-Aids, snake bandages, alcohol wipes. On these bigger hunts, we've got antibiotics like Nurofen, GastroStop, antiemetics, that type of thing. A set of tweezers to pull, splinters and stuff out. But I would trade all of those things that I mentioned in the first aid kit after it just to carry a tourniquet around. Because, if you've got a splinter in your foot, it's going to hurt. But if you get messed up by a grizzly bear, or even hunting in Australia here, and accidentally a pilot cut falls out of your quiver and stabs you up in the thigh, or have a bad knife injury or anything like that, get ripped up by a boar, buffalo, anything, a tourniquet is literally going to save your life. So please make sure you grab one. They're very cheap online. I think they're probably between $50 and $100. Could literally save someone's life. So please go and grab that. Another really important thing that we often carry is water purification tablets. So making sure we've got that option, but also making sure that I carry a SteriPen as well, so that we can sterilize water over there, which, it's just super handy. That way we know, even if we're out and we find some water, clean running water, quickly just sterilize it with the SteriPen or some tablets. And, there you've got fresh water on the hunt as you go.
I think talking to life-saving as well, one thing that we've got, whether it's on our bino harness or in our backpacks in that top zip of the hood, would be the Garmin InReach or equivalent. James has a mini. I've got another version of a Garmin which has the InReach or the emergency sort of hit that button and you've ideally got people coming to help you out. Both of those are absolutely essential for what we're doing, especially over in America where we're going to be doing a lot of backpack hunting in remote wilderness areas. Things like lighters, matches, because we're going to be carrying the jet boil around quite a lot, doing meals and things like that on the mountain. We'll have lighters. James is a massive fan of the 3B cream for chafe, which, hopefully because it's going to be a bit milder conditions in the fall over there of, Montana, USA. It won't be as hot, as sweaty, so we won't be getting as much chafe and things like that. But it is just good, especially little things like a chapstick for windburn and sore lips. Just these little creature comforts that keep you out there hunting harder and longer. Insect repellent is something that we normally have in the pack. I'm not exactly sure what bugs and things like that we're going to have over in the USA. I know that they do get ticks and things like that in certain places, but I don't think it's going to be an issue come fall. So that is most of the sort of safety gear that we're looking towards to have in our packs.
There's a reason they say, get serious, get hoyt. Ayden and I have always shot hoyts, and that's because we're rough on gear. Our bows are constantly getting knocked and thrown around, but we know they will stand up to the test when the time comes. Hoyt has created the lightest, best performing carbon bows on the market. While some people change their bows like the season, I've had my old girl since 2019 and she's still performing flawlessly. If you're in the market for a new bow, get serious, get hoyt. The next category we've got is headlamps. So Ayden and I both run the LED lenses, but there's plenty of other fantastic headlamp brands as well. Just making sure that like on a trip like this, we've also got spare batteries or spare headlamp batteries, I should say. And just making sure that you've got a head torch that's fairly versatile, I guess, in the sense that you can put it on full brightness, if you are blood trailing an animal or in a pretty dicey situation where you might think you're bluffed out or something like that, and you can really focus that beam and have a bit of vision, in the depths of night. Or equally, if you just need something for a camp torch for a couple of weeks and just let it sort of last forever essentially. So I'm not sure on the exact one, but I know that it does last. I think it's about 80 or 100 hours on its low setting, which is like a camp torch essentially, or I think it's lasts 15 hours on its highest setting at full ball. So something that's just important to really consider, especially on these extended trips, and making sure sometimes it's even worth just carrying a backup, because one of these things that if you're blood trailing in the middle of the night, especially after these big animals, you really do want to make sure that you've got enough light to light your way and hopefully find whatever you're looking for, or get out of a situation and find camp.
The next thing that we're going to be relying on quite a bit is actually our hydration bladders. So Ebola stock make a 3 litre variant, but obviously when it does get warmer in September, you're going to be wanting to drink more than 3 litres, especially when we're going to be using water for like dehydrated meals and things like that. So that's why we also carry a Nalgene bottle. With that, in regards to that, we always have the wide brim version, which basically has like an inch or more hole diameter at the top. You can get some with like a small neck that you can drink out of a little bit easier. But as far as collecting water goes, and then being able to add supplements and hydration stuff to that Nalgene, it just makes it a whole lot more difficult trying to fit it all through a small little hole. So that's why we've sort of gone and got the wide brim version. It's mainly for collecting water from creeks and streams and things like that, whether it's in the USA or New Zealand.
And the last couple of sort of take-home items would be very important, and that is baby wipes. So not only good for just having a sort of a shower, I guess, if you're really desperate, but just, obviously a very high necessity when you need to go after having that first dog and gun on the mountain and you're running for the woods. So obviously, whether you're in Australia or New Zealand, Europe, anywhere, just be diligent and either bury your wipes or take them out with you. Don't be a surface pooper and be that person and leave it, because there's nothing worse than coming across floating toilet paper or wipes in the bush. Make sure you're respectful of other people, whether it's hikers, hunters, campers, whatever, and make sure you bury your turds. So hugely important. The other thing that we carry is a waterproof cover for our backpack. Really, really important. We've been doing it for ages now, and it's just one of these things that, especially if we got really expensive gear like optics, spotting scopes, and obviously the camera gear, as well as a heap of other electronics, your phones and chargers and all that type of stuff. If it's a backpack hunt especially, you just want to have that extra little bit of cover, and it is pretty nice just getting it out and quickly whipping it on. And then it's obviously you get wet, but depending if you don't have your waterproofs with you or whatever. But yeah, it's just nice keeping everything in your bag nice and dry. So a little extra additive there, but definitely think it's worth the weight and the size in your backpack to keep everything dry.
A couple of USA specific additions that we're going to be taking along with us are mainly callers. Obviously going over there in the peak of September, we're going to be hunting the bugle or the rut for the elk. So we're going to be taking over some Phelps game callers. Mainly the bugle tube. We'll only take one of these between the two of us. Again, just because one of us is going to be hunting at one time and the other person will be filming. We'll probably each carry multiple Phelps diaphragm calls, which we've actually grabbed from Venture Hunting and Outdoors, who are stocking them. And we grabbed them a little while ago and have been using them pretty religiously at home to the expense of our spouses. You basically just want to be using them before the trip, one, to get, a few reps in and practice and make sure you're sounding half realistic, like an estrus cow. But two, just to actually work that latex and sort of break down the call a little bit to the point where it's more malleable, it's going to sound right, and it's now sort of broken in and ready for the hunt. So we've been doing that for the last couple of weeks. As I said, I like to carry one nearly half in my mouth for most of the hunt, the other one in a pocket somewhere on the binocular harness where it's easily accessible for a calling situation. And as I said, both James and I will have one pretty much at all times as well. Even if someone's the camera person, they're often the ones that are maybe pulling up the deer or calling, to that elk to try and get him to come in another 5 yards if we're slightly split up and things like that. Another one, which is sort of falls into that safety category, but is definitely USA specific, would be bear spray. It's something that, going back to our previous Montana hunts, we carried with us every single day, except for the one time that we should have had it mostly, which is when, we actually took our binocular harness off to pack out our big bull that James shot and kind of went, oh shit, we don't actually have our bear spray. So that was just a bit of an ignorance and a due diligence sort of thing. But bear spray is something that we'll still take with us on all these hunts. The last thing, I guess that is a bit of a USA specific addition, would be our new Agali trekking poles. We've got them in the carbon version or variation just because they're a little bit lighter, but they don't really sacrifice any strength, which is going to be great for us for our backpacking. And another added benefit of this is that they actually make up, I guess, our tent pole. If you imagine the central tent pole, with our Agali sleep systems that we're going to be running, and we will touch on here in a second when we get to the backpacking component.
One little additive that we didn't sort of know where to put it was our spotting scope. So we've got we're running a Leopold 20 to 60 spotting scope. Gone a little bit heavier because we're going to be planning on hunting probably mainly as day hunts and a fair bit more open country where we potentially be looking out to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kilometers away, and just being able to identify, is that a creature or animal that we want to go and chase. So Ayden and I, both obviously just with the general tags, we're not expecting or hoping to shoot giants, but also being realistic with having 6 tags between us, and between filming as well as hunting obviously cuts down the time considerably. So yeah, the spotting scope is going to be for identifying animals, but just making sure it's something we want to chase, especially if it's a couple of miles away. And using a mag view adapter certainly helps with that, not only for us as well, where we can actually film through that to our phones, which is going to enable us to be able to use some of that footage in the videos that you guys are going to see, but also just for identifying and recognizing a potential animal, whether it be a buck or a bull, and be able to identify him in the future. It's great rather than being like, oh yeah, I remember his like G4 was a little bit longer on that side. It's so much easier just having that record. And we put it here as in between like what people sort of generally carry and a US specific edition, because for Ayden and I know I'm hunting mountains a lot, and 50% of the time this scope is just in my bag now because of how good the glass is and how often, even in the home hills, it saves me walking, 2 or 3 ridges away to go and check out a boar that I thought, through the binos looked pretty good. But you quickly whip the spoiling scope out, only takes a minute, set it up and have a look with that mag view adapter, and you're like, oh, actually it's a really, really young boar. It's just got a ripped ear and it's just got like what we would call milk teeth, which is like barely any tusks. But you've just saved yourself walking probably 1.5 km or running 1.5 km over there, and you can continue on your hunt. So it is a little bit more heavy than some of the smaller optics, doing that 20 to 60, but the benefit of that is that you get more magnification earlier in the lower light settings. So, generally speaking, a lot of the time is when, an animal's making it into that thick timber or brush, when the sun's first coming up, and having that 20 to 60, that 20 setting, you do get a lot of magnification, and especially with adding the mag view on top, you can actually zoom in on the phone to get more magnification at a very good quality. It's a deadly combination, and something I recommend having here in Australia and or on these bigger trips, especially if you're chasing that next level of trophy potential.
The next category of gear that we'll get into, should we actually be successful, which is ultimately our game plan, is what we call our kill kit. So this involves everything from knives to aftercare of game. This year, I've been actually using the Iron Gate knives, which the lads over there have sent us out a couple each. I've been pretty busy using their simple little hunter knives lately, as well as one of their breakdown knives for when I get game back home and sort of am butchering it up, cutting, the big muscle groups into big slithers and things like that to do either mincing or cryovacking for that, whatever the meat, I guess, is or used for. But where I've been really impressed is with their little hunter knives. I'll probably take one of these over and have it in my binocular harness, purely because they're super, super sharp and efficient. And I was able to, with some recent chital deer guiding, just as a bit of a tester, they sent us over a couple. And one of the things with the first one that I used was I just wanted to see how much I could get out of the one knife and one use, and was happy to say that I could easily cape a full chital deer and then basically debone all the cuts from the neck meat, disarticulate joints, remove back straps where you're obviously cutting along the spine and the vertebrae and things, all the way to the front legs, and even do a little bit of the removing the skull and all that type of stuff, removing meat from the skull to boil it with the one knife without even touching it up on a stone. And I know that's a bit of malpractice for such a nice knife, but again, I just wanted to see that, out for this America trip, say I don't have a steel or stone on me because I'm trying to cut weight or something like that, how much could I actually get out of a knife? And it's, safe to say that it will happily do the job on a chital deer, which is very much, a finer sort of critter, similar to like a mule deer or a pronghorn. So I'll be taking an Iron Gate knife over, which is probably the biggest addition to our kill kits. We have tried and tested a lot of stuff over the years. And I think, as James will touch on here in a second, we run the Outdoor Edge 3-inch blades, which have a really rigid spine. These are stocked at venture hunting and something that we've used now for a couple of years, as well as, the Agali game bags, which are pretty standard for us. So these are things that just make, trophy preparation, and whether it's, caping an animal and being able to put the hide in a meat bag and hang it up in a tree, or just air out cuts of legs and, neck meat, back straps, whatever, and just get that cold air hitting it a little bit faster. It just makes the whole process so much cleaner, and having good, reliable gear is really, really important.
One of the benefits of working with Venture as a hunting store is, Ayden and I, who are fairly, experienced and well-versed in a lot of the gear, could obviously make recommendations to them when they were initially stocking and getting all their supply in. And definitely the Agali game bags and Outdoor Edge were huge at the forefront of our recommendations. Like, I actually bought my first Outdoor Edge knife, which I've still got now, in the US. Like, I couldn't get them in Australia over 5 years ago. and broke down an elk with that there, and have done plenty of times. And it was actually a relief to be able to now source those interchangeable blades. But like Ayden said, I liked it much better than my traditional Havlons, even those like 3-inch Havlons, just because of that rigid spine that you had. Like you don't have, you probably got 1.5 centimeters there of steel in that blade, where in a Havlon at the back of it, you've only got a couple of mil. And as soon as you start twisting it or anything like that, it snaps so easily. And you can have a new knife or a new Havlon scalpel blade that you've used for 3 cuts and then put it in the wrong spot and it snaps. The other thing was, if you get it in and you're cutting in a space and then you go past sinew, often it like pulls the blade off the actual Havlon holder or the scalpel blade holder, and it just, to be honest, pissed me off. I can't speak more highly of the outdoor edge knives, and just that, the interchangeable blade, knowing that, carrying a couple of blades, like you're going to be well and truly be able to, butcher everything you need. And if you've just got a light diamond file there, like the other day I was out doing a meat hunt, and I was able to get 4. We were just taking mainly back legs and back straps, and the odd like rib meat and that type of thing, front legs, but could confidently butcher like 4 fallow deer at a time with the same knife blade, just touching that up on a diamond file, in between sort of, you do 5 or 10 minutes worth of cuts, touch it up, keep touching it up sort of thing. So you do well and truly get your pennies out of the blades as well. It's not like you get half a deer and you give it a change it. So can't speak more highly for that. The Gali game bags are fantastic as well. Love being able to just actually hang your meat off the ground, and get it nice and cool, get all the moisture out of it, and protects it from the flies as well in any environment. So our kill kits have been pretty solid for a long time now. Love it, and it's one of these things that you just you buy once and you've got for a very long time. So if you're in the market for any of these things, make sure to go and check them out.
Embark on an unforgettable journey with our fully guided Chiddle Deer hunts, catering to both rifle and bow hunters. Spotted Safaris is conducted in the heart of the Basalt Wall region, North Queensland, Australia. We specialise in catering to all experience and fitness levels of our clients, providing trophy stag chiddle hunts as well as beginner focus adventures and meat hunts. With over 15 years bow hunting chiddle deer, our guides know these animals and the grounds they hunt like the back of their hands. With chances at a mature basalt boar as a bycatch and some spectacular wildlife viewing, there really is something for everyone at Spotted Safaris. Inquire today by emailing spottedsafaris@hotmail.com or simply send them a DM on their socials. Another feature that's definitely worth mentioning, and we were actually umming and ahhing whether to take it with us, as we've only used it a couple of times, but I guess due to its use, and especially through some of the testing that we've been able to do on it recently, the walk and stalk game bars, they essentially are called, the Lift Your Game system by Walk and Stalk. These carbon, basically multi-use. I think they say that there's 7 functions in the one bar, so you can use it as a bit of a trekking pole, as a spotting pole, as a rest. Especially, that's what I really liked about using it with Spotted Safaris with clients that primarily use rifles, was being able to just screw the adapter off the end of this, long carbon pole that's fully extendable from about 50 centimeters to, I think it's 1.7 meters in length is how high it can go at its highest. Being able to just simply basically unscrew the top of it off, and add basically a bit of a wide tip, similar to what you see in most of your classical gun rests, was absolutely awesome for being able to shoot chiddle deer in the long grass when we couldn't get to a tree or a termite mound or whatever it may have been. So that's where, if you're a rifle hunter, this is something to definitely look at just for its versatility. We were then able to use that same game bar once the client had shot his chiddle stag and use it as a bit of a T-piece or a frame between the back legs, and with what they call their lifting or kit or their pulley system, be able to strap that all up, use the rope that's provided in that pulley kit, and basically hang a 100 plus kilo chiddle deer up a tree with very little effort. Was able to do it by myself basically, and pull this chiddle deer up off the ground to keep its cape and its meat and everything like that super clean. Was able to drop the guts and then remove that from the site. but all out in the field. And I think that whole package comes in at about 1 kilo, packed, and that's including the game bar as well as the 300 gram lift kit or pulley system. So it's all super light, super versatile. And I think James and I after testing it on the Chiddle deer, came to a bit of a conclusion where we've got 4 tags on these smaller to mid-sized game animals, and we're just thinking that, if we can get a whole mule deer up off the ground, or a pronghorn up off the ground, it's going to be so beneficial for us, delivering clean meat to our friends over there in the USA and just breaking it down really efficiently and cleanly. So we're going to be taking those over there, or at least one between us. And again, for less than 1 kilo, it's so easy to pack and just add to that kill kit that we've actually got and been refining for many, many years now.
We're now going to jump into our camera gear, which we're probably doing more out of just a curiosity basis for you guys, and probably also more to highlight how much we, extra crap we carry for you guys to try and, showcase our films and that sort of thing. So what we've got is a Monfrotto tripod. I think that weighs in at about 2.8 kilos. We've also got a lightweight Leopold optics tripod, which is what the spotting scope's going to be on. So that's obviously not necessarily an addition, but we will be using it at night to do time lapses and that sort of thing. Ayden and I are going to be running 2 cameras over there, even though it's just, Ayden filming me and me filming Ayden. We're going to have an AS3 and an A7 IV. They're both A7R4, which are both Sony's. We'll have, generally speaking, one on our smaller lens, which is a 24-70 Sigma, and then one set up on a bigger lens, which is, generally speaking, our 150-600 Sigma. We've also got a 70-200 mm Sony, which we use for sort of that final stalk, so that we can video the animals, a bit further away, just say at 100, but also get that perfect kill shot and have a bit of zoom in there as well. So just something and a bit of a setup that we've sort of trialed and tested over a few years of filming. We then obviously have 1 million spare batteries for our cameras. I think last time I checked it was 25 or 28. It's sort of a constantly revolving number as you lose and find them in your gear. So plus then all the audio gear. So we've got Rode Video Pro mics. We've got the DJI gimbal. We've also got shotgun mics from Sennheiser and Rode. We've got Peak Design clips, which we use to carry our cameras and smaller lenses on. They're a hugely versatile thing that I've been using for a fair few years now, and I can't speak more highly of them. I think they're only a couple $100, but especially if you're a guy or girl that likes filming your own hunts or filming wildlife stuff, even if Ayden and I aren't together filming these big elaborate hunts for you guys to see, often I'm just carrying my camera on my hip with that 70-200 mm. So, you can be walking along and it's absolutely, no discomfort or anything like that. It's out of the way. You can still have your bow on your shoulders. You don't have that tripod. And you can, get the camera out when you need to video that bird or that deer or the wallaby or whatever you want to do. Take a nice photo and then quickly put it back on your hip, and you can glass with 2 hands and, quickly go and shoot something or whatever, it's a fantastic clip. Can't speak more highly of it. So those Peak Design clips are fantastic. We've also got dry bags just for trying to keep everything not broken, which we seem to be very good at, especially when it's raining, trying to get that shot. We actually broke a lens during the rut trying to get some footage. So got dry bags, and we should use them more, but we try and get the shot for you guys. Also got little cube lights, just if we need to do any filming at night time. We've got intervalometers for doing time lapses during the day, or mainly those star time lapses that you see at night. We do get some beautiful stars in the mountains in the US, just due to how remote they are. So really, really love doing them. We've obviously got 1 million SD cards. We generally speaking shooting pretty big sizes like 256 or 128 gigabytes, just with the size of the video files that we're shooting with that high-end 4K and high color bit rates. They fill up pretty quick. So the only extra thing that we've got, which we've thrown in here, is air tags as well, which is not necessarily camera gear, but something we recommend on any of these international trips. Speaking from someone that lost their bags for a couple of days and they had no idea where they were, would have been a lot of peace of mind to have an air tag in my bag, and to be able to say, sort your shit out, guys. It is currently sitting in Brisbane, or it's currently in LAX, or wherever it was. So yeah, make sure you can't recommend it enough, especially even just a person that has, like, if you're doing shoots or whatever all the time, or have really expensive fishing gear or hunting gear or whatever. Like I think they're $100 or something even less for an air tag. Yeah, definitely get one for peace of mind. So Ayden and I will both have one in our backpacks. So that covers off a lot of the camera gear. Couldn't even tell you how much it weighs. Yeah, it doesn't really matter to us. We do it because we love it, and really want to share that story with you guys. So obviously a lot of extra weight there than what you'd need for a traditional backpack hunt or even day hunt. But yeah, it gives you a rough idea of all the extra gear. You will note that I didn't say that we're not taking a drone. Just for a couple of reasons. So firstly, we'd need a fair bit of additional licensing. But to be honest, the main one is you can't fly a drone on the same day that you're hunting. And having 6 tags, it's just a bit of a conflict of interest and is going to make it very difficult to prove that we used the drone on days that we weren't hunting. And yeah, we just didn't want to have that like grey area, I guess, where people would be like, oh, you use the drone for hunting. As someone would do. So yeah, we've just decided not to take it. And obviously, to be honest, I think it's about 3 kilos with all the batteries and stuff like that. So a fair bit of weight and size in carrying it as well. So there was a bit of that in the decision with limited weight and only a bag going over there. So no drone this time, but should be able to get plenty of beautiful landscape shots with the wide angle lenses.
The next thing that is a bit of an additive to this hunt compared to sort of our normal day hunts is obviously going to be the sleeping gear for our backcountry sort of style hunts. So the main 2 brands that we've gone and used, mainly due to their lightweight nature as well as their credibility, would be Agali and Cedar Summit. So as you'll hear here in a second, we have quite the collection of gear. Starting with our tents, we're running the Agali Rhinecon 2x1 person tent, which James and I are both going to snuggle into. And that comes in at about 544 grams. And basically I believe it's a 3 out of 4 season tent. So it's going to stand up to pretty much everything we need for it to do in the US for this trip. It's also super light, which is basically what we're going for here. And as we said earlier, it runs off a central trekking pole, setup, which is why we're running the Agali Carbon X trekking poles. One, just because over in the US, if we come up with mountains or carting out, an elk quarter, just having that stability of being able to run 2 trekking poles and navigate some of that terrain is going to be really beneficial, but also then being able to use the single trekking pole at night to sort of keep the tent up is going to be great. And those trekking poles, being carbon, are quite light at about 400 grams as well. We have another add-on there, which we're not sure if we're going to take, but it's worth mentioning because we'll definitely use it in future setups here. Whether it's over the Red Deer Roar or hunting sambar up in the Alpine country, where it's probably more likely to snow and have rain and all that type of stuff. But the Agali Talus tarp, which comes in at about 400 grams, and that's just going to be something else that we can add to this system to just make it a bit more rigid, as well as if absolutely essential. Not that we necessarily need it now because we've got our kill kits pretty much all dialed with the game bar and the game bags and everything like that. But you can, if working with bigger animals and wanting to spread out meat and stuff like that and just be a bit cleaner, you can use that tarp there and just have added function. I know in New Zealand in the past, we've used, tarps that are similar to this as something to just make a bit of a shelter when away from our sleeping gear. During the middle of the day, just say there's a bit of a rain shower comes in, just be able to, set it up on 2 trekking poles on the side of the mountain and keep glassing in the rain, knowing that you're dry and warm and whatnot. So that's an added benefit of having a tarp. But whether or not we take it, again, just being, mindful, primarily because we've got so much camera gear, on how much weight we can actually take in our backpacks. That's going to be the main deciding factor there. Jumping over to Cedar Summit, I guess we'll start with what we're lying on. So we're going to be running the Ether Light XR Pro, which are insulated sleeping pads. Both James and I have just gone for their regular length ones. They come in at about 560 grams, again, which is very light considering, how insulated they are and how well hopefully comfortable they're going to be, blowing them up easily and then laying on them throughout the night. The next thing would be the Cedar Summit Spark sleeping bags. These are -9 degree rated, so quite cold, obviously. And this is probably going to be the most heavy, weight, but it does come in as a bit of a luxury with these down sleeping bags. So they're going to weigh 730 grams, which we're prepared to do just because a good night's sleep is going to be essential with just trying to get, the repair and recovery on the mountain whilst doing this hunt. We're also going to have the Cedar Summit tent pegs. And then the last thing, which again is a bit of a comfort and something that I often pack on the plane in my carry-on, is something like a little sleeping pillow that's inflatable. We've again chosen to go on with the Cedar Summit Aeros ultralight sleeping pillow. And this comes in at 70 grams, which for that added weight, it's so much better than chucking, like a jacket or something like that in a game bag and trying to make a bit of a makeshift pillow. These are perfectly shaped and, again, just help contribute to having that good night's sleep, which is absolutely essential. And, again, I think one of the biggest things when choosing all of this sleep gear and trying to obviously come in underweight and, keep knocking, whether it's pounds or ounces or grams or kilograms off our setups, the biggest thing is just not, sacrificing the comfortability and quality. And that's where, again, using the Agali and the Cedar Summit gear has been able to preserve that comfort level and hopefully a good night's sleep, whilst also shaving off the grams and kilograms and things like that. So that's what we're sleeping with and running for these backcountry sort of style hunts whilst over in the USA.
With this setup, one of the main reasons is we've always probably been a fairly heavy gunned when it came to tent systems. With this Agali setup, it's pretty much half the weight. And if you do cinch it down tight all the way to the ground, it's pretty much a 4-season tent. Whereas if you have it opened up a little bit, it's more of a 3-season tent. Whereas what we've actually done is gone fairly deep off the far end into the negatives with the sleep system of the pad and also the sleeping bag. Like the R rating of the sleeping pad is 7.4, and obviously using a -9 bag at the comfort rating, the worst I've seen over there is -4. So we are fairly, well equipped in that area, but I would rather be hotter when I'm sleeping. And then the thing with sleeping bags is you can just open them up. Like we've had really high rated sleeping bags before, and if it's only like 5 or 10 degrees overnight, you just open it up and sleep with them like a doona. Like you don't need to sleep like they're full mummy setup. And then you can have your arms and legs sticking out the side and you get a really comfortable night's sleep. But if you do have one of those situations where it does drop down and get really, really cold overnight, you can obviously insulate yourself. And if it gets proper cold, just put on a set of thermals or something like that and sleep in those. But overall, this setup, super confident with it. And I think the Agali tent is just going to be a winner for us with heaps of room and ultra light, easy to set up. Just having that central one-person pole. Really, really looking forward to taking it over there this year and using that. And I think for us, everything here just packs down so small as well, which was another consideration factor. Obviously, as we mentioned, we've got all that camera gear above to fit into these bags. So we did have to consider not only the weight of the products, but also how small everything was. And everything goes down like tiny, less than a Coke can for most of these items. So it's going to be easy to fit these sleep systems into our bags as well, which is hugely important. We all know that when it comes to great tasting coffee in the outdoors, you look no further than Dog and Gun Coffee. Their preloaded drip filters are renowned for taking cafe-grade coffee into your hunting camp. But your favourite flavours can also be enjoyed at home with their whole bean variety. Use code TWIN10, that is TWIN, 10 the number, to get $10 off your first order. Switching over to the bino harnesses, we're going to be using the Eberle stock ones just because they're hugely versatile. They've got 3 different systems. So they've got a rangefinder pouch, obviously the main binocular pouch, and a separate little pocket all set up in their bino harnesses, as well as a couple of little pockets on the sides of those where you can stash little items like extra batteries, lens cleaners, your wind puffer, release aid, those type of things. Whether you've got a Havilon or an outdoor edge knife, you can chuck it in there as well. In terms of optics, we're going to be running the Leopold Santiums 10x50s. We just like that bigger view, especially hunting in the mountains. It helps with just spotting. It's incredible how many extra game you spot just on the periphery that you'd probably miss with a set of 10x42s. They are slightly heavier, but I, to be honest, like the feel of them in my hands. They are just a little bit bigger and they just sit quite nicely. We're going to be running a Leopold rangefinder, which has angle compensation, which is hugely important for when you're hunting in the mountains. Can't recommend that more to all the bow hunters out there. It's a must-have. Getting a rangefinder that has that, because you're going to stuff up plenty of shots if you don't. What we're going to do is set up one bino harness as sort of the hunting bino harness with everything I've mentioned. So the optics, plus obviously, probably a knife, wind puffer, release aid, maybe a couple of spare batteries and a head torch and diaphragm calls. And then we're going to have a second one set up as the filming bino harness, I guess, which is going to have mainly more batteries, lens cleaners, still going to have head torches, wind puffers, and probably a knife, but just won't have optics in there, won't have a rangefinder. And that's just so when we're filming with two cameras, you can essentially stash one as a big pocket in the front of you and put the B-roll camera, the smaller lens camera into your bino harness, and be able to use the bigger lenses and have a set of hands there. So that's just a setup we've adopted to be able to film with two cameras when we've only got one person doing multiple jobs. Having that Eberly stock bino harness just helps with that, because it's got a nice pocket there for the binos that just fits the camera in there perfectly. The reason we specifically like that as well is because it hasn't got the magnetic clip, which is hugely important, because I can't tell you how many people I've guided and in the final moment of the stalk, their bino harness seems to find that magnet and just go dook. And obviously it makes quite a lot of noise. I can't really fault their bino harness in any way. It's been absolutely perfect. So really enjoyed that, but that gives you a rundown of what we're using in our bino harnesses.
I think for me, we definitely perfected that, bino harness compatibility, where the hunter had one set up and then the other person who was filming had the second set up. And I think I can probably hear a few of you guys that are listening here saying, why wouldn't you carry a second pair of binos for glassing and all that type of stuff? And honestly, it just comes down to trusting James or myself when we are the one in charge doing the hunting and the stalking and whatnot. And I guess each of us both, I'd say, have probably better vision comparatively to most of the population, just through guiding and, obviously hunting a lot. I think we don't really miss too much. And even with the naked eye, it's amazing when you're honed into your environment, you can pick up and then just say, hey, can you just check that? And again, through hunting for years and years together, it's not a long process for me to say, yep, just by that tree or that object, if you go 10 paces to the right near that tree, that's where it was, where I saw something move. Can you just check that? It looked like an ear flick. It's that whole process takes seconds for us rather than minutes. So it's not something that we find, or that I find, that we miss out on by having two sets of binos. But just by actually being diligent enough to not carry a second set of binos, I think we capture so much more footage, which I've really noticed in a lot of these later films that we've been doing over the last sort of 6 months to a year. And I think the experience of that is so much better for you, because I think we fell into the trap of, we both are so goal driven and want to obviously get it done on the animal, that, if we're both sitting there looking for elk on the mountain, one person's not filming. And I think by removing that impulse, certainly, like if we've got plenty of B-roll and we're not moving and we're sitting on a mountainside for hours and hours, but that's where I think we get the spotting scope out and one person's looking through the spotting scope while the other person's looking through the binos with their hunting chest rig. So we've kind of adopted it more to just have, no, you're hunting, I'm filming, this is my role, that's your role. And obviously, like, you're still part of the hunt, but it's just, we're there very much so with the primary focus of filming nowadays as that second person, rather than being, a second spotter and whatnot. We trust the person that's got the binoculars to be doing the job well enough. And again, there's no difference whatsoever between James and I when each of us have that role with the camera or the bow. So Yeah, that's just sort of why we've gone and done that. But it definitely achieves a lot more footage, which is sort of our ultimate goal.
Now, jumping into our boots and clothing, I guess we'll start with footwear, which is critically important. Ayden and I are both going to be running lower Ranger GTX 3s, which we've spoken about a lot on previous podcasts, whether it's floodplains and rooted up soil, or just chittle deer guiding, or hunting in the mountains here, or hunting in the mountains anywhere. To be honest, there's no other boot that I'd like to wear. It's just super comfortable. It's rigid enough, but you get a bit of flexibility. It's not that heavy of a boot. And yeah, for me, I honestly just don't think there's another boot that I would wear. Another benefit of the lower ranges that I've found, and a lot of people have found, is it doesn't really take much to wear them in. So I know for me, I've been lucky enough. I have only worn these new set of boots that I'll be taking to the US once before the trip, just to make sure they fit. And I've actually kept them spotless now for a couple of months. I've worn them around the house a couple of times, pretty minimally, but I've honestly wanted to keep them clean just for, border security reasons, just because it's one of the first things that they check. And yeah, it's peace of mind knowing that I know these boots are going to perform and fit to my feet perfectly. Not going to be worried about blisters at all, even though they're a new pair of boots and not really that worn in. And they're just going to stand up time and time again, whether it's, scree, sleet, snow, anything. It's just going to be absolutely perfect. And that's why we love the lower ranges.
The next thing that we'll talk about is obviously our camouflage and sort of clothing systems. And for me, I'm just going to start with the Pursuit pants, which I've really, really loved. Wore obviously a lot over the rut and just found them to be super, super comfortable. Most of my experience with the Numa camouflage clothing was actually with their Renegade lineup, using the Renegade pants as well as the Renegade quarter zip sort of pullover shirt. And that was more for like these warmer sort of climate hunts where I was living in the Northern Territory or guiding on the chittle deer. But it was actually nice to hunt a little bit more of a colder, temperate climate and try some more of their lineup. And one thing that's really great about the Numa gear is that their quality just seems to go throughout the whole range. And as I said earlier, the Pursuit pants are going to be my go-to, especially for those probably more cold, brisk mornings where we're going to be hunting. And as we found in September a couple of years ago especially, is that you do get these cold mornings, but then quite quickly it can actually warm up and be quite a nice day throughout the day. So we certainly don't want to go with something too frigid and too heavy or too cold, just because, as I said, like September can actually get quite warm. And I guess having sort of gear in the background that we can chuck on, whether it's our, Numa puffer jackets. I've got a vest that I'll probably take over there. We've also got the hooded jackets that make up a really nice rugged exterior shell for those sort of cold, more frigid mornings, are going to be really good. But I'm hoping that just by having a sort of a lighter, more run and gun pant in that Numa Pursuit pant, it's going to help us just keep cooler. Because I find that, this is me personally speaking again, I would actually rather have, more base layers and things like that on towards my chest and my torso, and then have a cooler leg system, just because I don't find that I lose heat as much through my, I guess, pants. And to be honest, I get hotter and sweatier down there, especially with the walking. And that's where having, zips and areas where you can actually dump heat through a zip is actually more important to me.
See, for me, I will be running mainly the Renegade pants and also their merino base layer. I love this setup, especially the merino. I used to be a sort of polyester man, whereas recently I've switched to the full merino setup on the top, and it's so comfortable, especially for these hunts where, I'm only taking one set of Renegade pants and two tops as base layers. So it's like those two tops are going to get fair hiding, to be honest. And yeah, with the merino, like, you are going to stink, but it's going to absorb that moisture really well. And being so light, it dries really well as well. So the other alternative for clothing that I'm going to have is the Vertex gear, which I'll have the jumper and also the pants, which is sort of more of my cooler climate gear, I guess. If it is cold in the mornings, I'll probably look at having either that Vertex jacket on, or potentially my 3L waterproof jacket, which isn't insulated. It's more of just sort of like a lightweight shell, I guess. Obviously, 100% waterproof. But they're sort of my protective layers. Like Ayden said, I don't get personally that cold with my sort of bottom half. So I generally am going to be running that Renegade pants unless it does get really, really cold and wet. Then I'll be running the Vertex pants. I've personally decided not to take over the waterproof pants just because the Vertex pants are water resistant and do a really, really good job. And even if we're facing really, really treacherous, crappy, rainy conditions, I'm confident that it's going to be able to keep me dry. During those circumstances. So, sort of saving a bit of space and weight there, not bringing the pants, but I do trust their Vertex system and lineup.
A few other little additives and just creature comforts, I guess, that we should mention is for this hunt particularly, again, to match our lower boots and our foot care, we'll both be running merino socks, which we've recently added. And I think, honestly, I've worn them a few times now since in the lead up to this trip, and it does make a huge difference just having better quality socks. It's something that I used to laugh at over the last couple of years, just wearing, crappy little socks that I wear around the house or to gym normally. Just by getting some better quality merino socks, you really do take care of your feet, particularly on these longer trips or any hunts where you're sweating and then getting cold and these sorts of things. So the merino socks are going to be a winner for us on that, or to that point. Gloves, particularly when we're more exposed on those open faces and things in the early morning, doing a bit of glassing or potentially looking through the spotting scope. It's obviously good to just add those on. We're running the Numa gloves, which we've chosen a pair that is actually not super thick. Again, I don't particularly get really cold in my hands or anything like that. And normally I like just being able to pop them in my pockets if we're sitting there. But for this purpose, it's more of a windshield, and they're more of a lighter sort of outer layer just to keep your fingers and stuff warm. We'll also be taking face mask or a buff, mostly just for that last little bit of concealment, but also to keep our face and neck warm if we're sitting there in a bit of a standoff with a big bull elk at around 30 yards as he comes in front on. And then one other added benefit that we love from Numa is their sort of hat/beanie hybrid, which I remember both James and I sort of looked at and laughed at when having a look at their catalog and sort of gear that we'd like. And we did end up trying it, and it was something that we absolutely loved, particularly over the rut for those cooler mornings. Just being able to have the benefit of a bit of like a cap with a sun visor, but then this beanie element that keeps your ears nice and warm and is nice and soft and all that type of stuff to keep you out of the wind and just keep everything a bit more warm. It's a very unforgiving setup, and to be honest, it's actually quite nice, particularly when it is cooler in the mornings or late evenings to have sort of as part of your pack or kit.
Yeah, that as I've officially called it a heaney, a hat cross a beanie, because a bat just didn't seem to really, didn't sound right. But yeah, the heaney, as we like to call it, is awesome. Like Ayden said, we sort of laughed at it a little bit when we first looked at the catalog and wanted to get them. But during the rut, like those colder mornings and stuff, like it just keeps you so nice and warm. And yeah, it's incredible how much like just that little insulation on your ears, especially when you got massive ears like me, does help. Just sort of, regulate your temperature and keep you nice and warm in a lot of circumstances. You do get hot in them quite quickly, but yeah, a really nice piece of kit if you're just sitting out there glassing or on pretty exposed faces. Another little thing with the gloves that I've probably noted as a side note is, first thing in the morning, carrying that tripod around, it is like carrying an icicle. And so having one glove on or both gloves on when you're carrying them first thing in the morning, even sometimes carrying your bow, is a bit of a luxury, but definitely like what Ayden was saying, where you just plant it up, glassing first thing, trying to find a big stag or a big buck or whatever we're going to be looking for. It's quite nice just having that little level of comfort that keeps you out there a bit longer on the mountain. So as you'll see, a lot of these things are little extras, but yeah, a lot of it is also just to make sure you're comfortable. Especially talking about the puffy jacket, which is a massive one when we're glassing, and just keeps you nice and insulated. make sure you stay out there longer, because everyone's, especially I find Australian hunters and New Zealand hunters, we do tend to be fairly mobile, guys and girls, and like to move around. But it's not until you stop that you really notice how cool it can get. So making sure you've got a good puffy jacket, especially if the wind's ripping through you, just helps stay a bit longer out on the mountain, and you're a lot more comfortable. So between those couple of things, the little heaney, puffy jacket, and face mask and gloves, just means that we're going to be able to stay out in the mountain, especially glassing, a lot longer. Another little additive that we put in there for clothing, not that it's really necessarily part of it, but we've also got Crocs / breathable footwear, mainly for around camp. In terms of like clothing and stuff, Ayden and I are going to be very, very, very minimalistic in terms of our personal sort of social clothes, I guess. Pretty much like I've got 4 pairs of jocks and socks that I'm taking over for a whole month. So obviously going to be wearing them inside out, back to front, all the rest of those combinations. And then, really just taking, I think like a couple of t-shirts, a lightweight jumper, 1 set of pants, and that's pretty much it. Just going to have the lower ranges and the Crocs in terms of footwear. So not expecting to go any black tie events, but hopefully, be able to maximize the gear that we've got for hunting and that type of thing. And obviously probably going to take some aftershave because we're going to stink. But other than that, that's pretty much all our gear that we're going to be taking over.
Hunt and Full is the foremost hunting resource with varied levels of memberships to get you on your next adventure. Whether it be an annual trip or once-in-a-lifetime adventure, Hunt and Full and the consultancy team will cater to your needs. James and I have been utilising their services for a couple of years now, and virtually immediately, James reaped the rewards when he drew a coveted limited entry elk tag. James would not have known about the opportunity, let alone ever applied for this unit, and therefore, without the assistance of our friends at Hunt and Full, a hunt like this would not have been achievable. If you're interested in using Hunting Full's license application services to draw more tags across the Western United States, then please email applications@huntandfull.com and mention Twin Elements to get 25% off your first year of service. The Hunt and Full team will take care of it from there. The last thing that we're going to cover here, and it's not really at length just because a lot of it's going to be sort of as we get over there and see what, the sportsman warehouses and all these types of things have in stock, is going to largely dictate what we can actually use. But just in the past, going over and having quite a high nutritional demand on our bodies doing these sorts of hunts when you're out in the field for, long durations up to 20, 30 days at a time. Nutrition, hydration, supplements, all that type of stuff is going to be absolutely essential and something that we've really come to actually try and take care of ourselves and our bodies. And that basically starts for us with a lot of things like trail mix. We like our nuts, our almonds, whether it's macadamias, cashews. Cashews seem to be the winner for us. We love our salted cashews. Things like jerkies, salamis, even dried fruits such as apricots. We always add them in. In the past, like here in Australia, on nearly every single one of our hunts, we have tuna or sardines. Even though they're a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger and bulkier to carry, it's just something that for the protein and fats that we love having with us, as well as the flavour. And that's probably the biggest thing with any food, especially on these sort of hunts, is that you've got to make sure that you're excited to actually eat it, and you're going to have to want to stop and eat. Just especially, I know that as I get more tired and these sorts of things, you often get to a glassing knob and you get the glass out and you're kind of just like that exhausted that you're like, oh, I'm almost just going to sit here and start glassing, because it's like not necessarily easy to do, but it's the easiest thing to do. You don't want to sit there when it's super cold and have to force yourself to eat stuff, especially if there's, no real reward for it. And I guess that's where, even things like dark chocolate we've added in. We try not to have too many lollies nowadays in any of our, food or nutrition packs, just because of, that increased sugar feels good for about 20 minutes. And then half an hour later, I know that I generally feel a bit crap, or that sugar dump sort of kicks in and you actually lose a bit of energy. That's where the trail mixes, protein bars, those sorts of things really come into play. And to be honest, when it comes to the US, we're just going to be making sure that it's super, super like caloric dense, if that makes sense. So a big thing that we're focusing on is that it's basically lightweight and super dense in calories. So if you've got a packet of food that's 500 grams in weight and has 500 calories, then that's pretty crap compared to something that's 200 grams in weight when you then have 1,000 calories. It's just the easiest way to sort of put that. The biggest limitation, I guess, for us is going to be water, especially if we're backpacking. So that's why we'll have dehydrated meals, whether it's peak meals, mountain house. There's so many different variations and versions. Again, once we're over there, we'll find out and probably be able to do a bit more of a comparison and report back on it all. But the biggest thing we're going to be looking for is basically calories and lots of them, because if those of you that can sort of recall our hunt from a couple of years ago, we were over there hunting for around 20 odd days. And I remember coming back to Australia, and I was pretty fit at the time going into it, with not much weight to sort of lose. And I think I lost 6 kilos or something like that of body weight. So, and that was trying to eat as much as we physically could, but you never can in these sort of conditions when your body, if you imagine its metabolic rate goes up to, try and keep you warm and manage your thermal regulations. You're obviously waking up a couple of hours before daylight, hunting throughout the day, going to bed a couple of hours after dark, walking back to, whether it's camp or the truck or whatever, and then trying to stay warm in your tent and all these type of things. So you have to, with absolute urgency, be eating really quality food. And that's where hopefully, with some of these dehydrated meals, we'll get enough. But then with the protein powder, dried fruits, nuts, trail mixes and stuff like that, we'll be able to top up enough to keep us going for this rut period.
Yeah, something I'd like to expand on that we haven't done, but I've organised for this trip. We did it during the rut, which was just incredible for recovery. Ayden and I hunted for, roughly 30 odd days together, maybe a little bit less than that during the rut. We had protein powder, which was sort of the first time we'd really done it properly, where every single day, we weren't chasing a huge amount of calories in because we were sort of hunting from a camp, so a bit easier to regulate calories and stuff. But we were just mixing it with either like a little bit of water or some milk sometimes for a bit of luxury. But just in terms of muscle recovery, we're obviously fairly fit and train a fair bit for these sort of things in the mountains or guiding and hunting all the time. But yeah, just in terms of had no muscle soreness whatsoever with the protein powder. So I've actually ordered some already from a US company and got it delivered to my mate's place. So yeah, we're going to look at using that. If you want a backpack alternative, this is just general protein powder. But I think a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing is day hunting with maybe a little bit of backpack hunting in. So, a good alternative would actually be a mass gainer protein powder. Super calorie dense, and then just even on the mountain, just mix that with some milk powder or something like that, or you can just mix it with water, turn it into a paste, and suck that out of a Ziploc bag. Super high protein, super high calories, and a great idea. Literally, you could have it for lunch one day, on the mountain with very little weight but very high calorie and protein. So something even to think about over here for guys that might be all day hunters that don't want to carry the weight. Pretty cool idea there, but. Another one that's really important is hydration and electrolytes. So Ayden and I are massive fans of Atlas Wild. They've got a couple of different varieties, and the combinations that we sort of run is they've got their Rise, which has 200 milligrams, so about 2.5 coffees worth of caffeine, which I generally put for me into my 3-litre camel pack first thing in the morning. So I'm sort of constantly sucking on that, getting plenty of B vitamins and electrolytes all day on my morning hunt. I generally carry a little 1-litre Nalgene, which I may use to mix in with, another Atlas Wild, one of their Regenerates, which is just an electrolyte one, has no caffeine. Or I may just use it for dehydrated meals and that type of thing. It just depends. And then in the Arvo, I'm typically using their Fusion setup, which has electrolytes again, but also has, I think it's 70 or 80 milligrams of caffeine. So only one sort of caffeine, which, just sort of perks you up again and keeps you going. And I've found, using a variety of those combinations, if I'm really sore and starting to get that sort of muscle fatigue, even having a Regenerate at night, just purely from a satisfaction point of view and just enjoying it. I find that, like what Ayden was saying, like sometimes you just get to a point where you're so tired, dehydrated, and just exhausted that you don't really want to eat and drink. Whereas just putting a little bit of this regenerate in, I mean, the flavors that they've got I think 4 different flavors. Are actually ridiculous. Like they just taste so good. Obviously, having no caffeine, you're not going to risk being kept up at night, even though you're that exhausted. I don't think it'll matter. But it makes you drink that water, and you put that into a liter of water, and you smash it, and all of a sudden, you just start feeling a lot better, and you're putting yourself into a better environment to wake up, on the rise and on the mend for the next day of hunting. So, that's how we manage our hydration and electrolytes. A little side perk as well that we like to keep in our backpack is the OzCaf energy pouches. We're very much caffeine addicts between Ayden and I. I wouldn't say it's caffeine addicts, but probably more just using it as a tool, really. Like obviously between the hunting and the filming, you're always ultra focused, and a lot of the time you're waking up at 3:34 in the morning, not getting back to camp until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. That's pending we don't shoot something. If you shoot something late last light, it might be an all-nighter. And so being wired for that amount of time, day in, day out, does require a lot of focus. And so just having those caffeine pouches in a pocket somewhere, the general ones that they've got are only 35 milligrams. I've been lucky enough to steal a new prototype, which is 150 milligrams that I'm very keen to put through and test in the US, which is obviously going to give you a lot of buzz. But to be able to whack one of them in your top lip just before a stalk or when you're feeling that low definitely helps us out with keeping focused on the mountain and just making sure you're ultra vigilant, even when you are absolutely exhausted.
So James spoke to caffeine a little bit there, and it's definitely worth us mentioning one of our staples in camp. And again, it makes it a little bit harder when you're doing these backpack expeditions, but as far as quality coffee goes in the outdoors, we love our dog and gun coffee. We continuously use sort of the drip filters when out in the bush, but whether it's out backpacking or anything, they've also got their instant coffee, which is really great. You simply add a little spoonful of that to some hot water, and you're having cafe quality coffee out in the field from the enjoyment of your camp. And I guess this for us is very much a luxury. It's not essential, but it is definitely a morale booster being able to sit out a rainy day in camp or in your tent and just heat up the jet boil and have a really nice warm cup of coffee, whether it's here in Australia, New Zealand, or in America. And we'll be taking over copious amounts of dog and gun coffee to the States to be enjoying from, whether it's out in the field or in the tent or between spots anywhere. It is with a bit of reputation that our friends over in America do a lot of things really well, but coffee, unfortunately, isn't one of them. So, we'll be taking some over with us to make sure that we're caffeinated and enjoying the good stuff out there. The last thing, I guess, in terms of charging and things like that and getting, geared up, we've just spoke about coffee refueling us a little bit. One other thing to mention would be our camera gear and battery setups and things like that. And we haven't really spoken about our phones, but we're going to be running Onyx on our phones religiously throughout this trip. We've already spent a bit of time on our desktops through our Onyx subscriptions and memberships, marking in a few likely spots, which we'll then, once we're over in the States, jump onto and sort of, log in on our phones. But we're running the dark energy charging unit. And James can probably speak to this a little bit more because he's the one that's actually gone through and organized it. But essentially, we've spent around $1,000 buying a multi-use charging kit that is going to be amazing for us, even in our future, whether it's remote Northern Territory trips over in New Zealand, some of these bigger, longer duration hunts. And it's basically all revolved around a solar charging unit, which fills up into power banks and then can obviously be used for our phones, camera gear, laptops, whatever it may be. So James can probably speak to that quickly. But some other gear that we're going to need and use in the USA, depending on sort of the type of hunt that we're doing, is some sort of cooler, hopefully like a Yeti. And then the first thing we're going to also buy from, whether it's a sportsman store or something like that, is going to be a target, just because it can't be overstated how important it is to, when doing these big travels, and especially with 6 tags in our pockets, is to make sure the bows are still tuned and shooting absolutely perfectly once we're over there in the US on foreign soil. So there are a few of the other considerations that we thought we'd just mention, not stuff that we're necessarily taking over there, but we will have to acquire it once we're over in the US.
So with the charging setup, I got a lot of feedback online and did a lot of research myself. And to be honest, I've gone with the Dark Energy. We've got no affiliate links or anything like that. Just purely off how rugged, waterproof, drop proof, smash proof, throwaway proof, everything proof it seemed to be. And that's why we've gone with that, because on these hunts, obviously there's no room for anything soft or cushy. Like, gear just breaks by looking at it or breathing on it. And so the Dark Energy power banks and also solar system just seem to be the most rugged. There was a couple of other systems that looked pretty good, that may have had bigger power banks, may have been slightly cheaper and stuff. But to be honest, with our hunts that we go on, like, we're going deep into the wilderness, and we just wanted something that we knew could stand up to the test. So what we've done is gone and bought the solar panel. Is an 18-watt solar panel. Can essentially withstand like 100 kilos of pressure on it and be fine, as well as the Poseidon Pro power bank. So the Poseidon Pro, I think it's only 10,000 milliamps lithium battery, which is only going to get you 2 to 3 phone charges. And what we've actually done is bought 3 of those Poseidon Pros, which we worked out is going to get us about 3 camera batteries per one, 2 to 3 full phone charges as well. And we're just going to alternate between the 3 different power banks that we've got into charging them up, as well as charging all that other gear, and just have them on a cycle. One of the other reasons why that we went this setup is it's like super waterproof, super dust proof. And so just a peace of mind, obviously for Ayden and I, like, we don't really want to be carrying these setups. Like, we want to carry them into the backcountry, but not necessarily have us on us all the time, like mainly charging these batteries overnight. That's why we're carrying so many camera batteries, and we've got spare batteries for our head torches and everything like that. Everything you can think of, we've got spare batteries for. So we mainly want to be charging in camp in our tents, which off these 2 chargers, and have one being charged, which it says it takes about 4 to 5 hours to charge. So pretty much be charging one, be using 2 to charge other things. But obviously being able to leave that solar panel out in camp in the sun and not have to worry about like coming back because it's raining and we don't want to break the solar panel and whatnot, or break the Poseidon Pro power bank. So that's sort of why I went with it. Fairly lightweight as well, and just charging capabilities. Like I said, there was plenty of different options out there, but just for how hardy it was, and waterproof, dustproof, all those things, crush proof. Like, you can throw these power banks off like a 3-story building. Just that type of thing was the reason, and a fairly good price. From memory, I think it was about $820 for a couple of power banks, and also the solar panel. So I just to save weight, got them ordered and delivered in the US to my mate's place, with the protein and stuff, just so we don't have to worry about carrying them over there. Obviously plan on bringing them back, but it was just something that we could save weight on the trip over. So I'm sure you'll be able to source these guys in Australia as well, or New Zealand, but that's what we've gone for, charging all of our phones, headlamps, and camera gear, accessories as well when we're in the US. The Hunting Australia Facebook group is now a club that you can join. Members get access to discount codes from leading businesses, you can acquire your New South Wales R licence membership, and every month they run incredible giveaways with thousands of dollars worth of top tier gear, but also give away guided hunts as well. So if you want to learn from the best, or go in the running to win some incredible gear, or maybe a hunt of a lifetime, or just want to be part of the greater hunting community, make sure to join the Hunting Australia group. Use code TWINELEMENTS to get 10% off your membership.
Radio legends, that brings us to the time of the show where we answer your frequently asked questions. So James and I are going to sit down and answer this week's one. I guess we actually kind of have since looking at it here, but this week's question was sent in by Camden Winter to have your FAQs answered, please send them through to info@twinelements.com.au with the subject line FAQ, or simply send us a DM via Twin Elements, Ayden Doumtsis Outdoors, or James Doumtsis Outdoors, and similar to this, we will strive to answer them on a future episode of the podcast. So Camden's question is, hey boys, I love your videos. You lads are doing a great job for the community. I just wanted to pick your brain a bit about what releases you are shooting. I'm shooting a Carter RX1 Index release, and I've developed a little bit of target panic. Just wanted to touch base and see what you guys think could help. I basically hunt solo, and there isn't any bow shops in my area to try and test with the millions of release aids. It can be quite hard to know the ins and outs of each. Alrighty, thanks very much for the question, Camden. So as you would have heard earlier at the start of the show, when we were talking about our bows and setups and things, so I'm shooting the Carter Evolution thumb release, which for me was a bit of a solution to target panic. Not by any means in its sole use or anything like that, but it was definitely part of that process. And James, as he mentioned earlier, is using the Scott Ascent, which is a bit of a hinge / sort of back tension release that he's now using for target and hunting and all that type of stuff. So both of us, I guess, when it comes to target panic, have dealt with it in different capacities over the last couple of years. For me, as I was saying earlier in the show, it sort of started off as me, anytime I was coming towards that target, my brain would almost like anticipate that I was getting near the target and prematurely just shoot, thinking like close enough is good enough, just shoot. There was no way, even when I told myself like, sit there and just hold the pin over the target, my brain basically couldn't do it. And that was with a trigger release, similar to what you're mentioning here with like the Index release one. And no matter how hard I tried, if it was shooting at a single white plate on a hay bale or shooting at a tiny 10-cent coin dot on a Reinhardt target, it didn't work. I tried spray painting the Reinhardt and putting a tiny little, white dot on the target and seeing if that was going to help. The second my pin sort of hovered remotely close to that little white dot, I would shoot, and it would often hit exactly where I was aiming because everything else was right, but it just was this aggressive sort of exaggerated form of target panic. And fortunately for me, it didn't really translate to my hunting as such. Like I think it was weird because it just was very prominent when I was shooting arrows at a target. I think because it didn't have the repercussions of shooting an animal and losing it or something like that. But I did notice that because of the target panic on targets, I couldn't get good enough groups to make sure my gear was really proficient and just shoot my bow comfortably, so that when there was any level of complexity, say a shot at 30 yards, which is a far shot for me, and I had to shoot between two branches or anything like that, I didn't have the reps behind me to be really confident in my shooting. And to be honest, I just got to the point where if the animal wasn't at like 10 meters broadside, I wasn't confident in my shot or shooting abilities because I hadn't shot my bow for a while because I was purely just hating the target panic component of shooting at a target before the hunt. So to be honest, I was fortunate that I hunted with James and other people a lot and loved videoing. So I sort of took a bit of a break from hunting, especially like probably that early 2020s till probably 2022, I'd say, and sort of stopped hunting as much personally. And for me, this isn't a solution by any means, but it definitely was something that helped, was stepping away from it for a little bit and then coming back. And it's almost as if the aggressiveness of that target panic had reduced so much that I could now look at a target and go, oh, all I have to do is hold the pin over that dot and actually execute a shot sequence. And for me, timing was massive. And then I used that time away to then go, okay, I'm now going to actually learn how to use, a thumb release in my example. And I felt that definitely helped a bit as well. So I think James can probably talk a bit more about why the hinge and a back tension might be something to look into. But before he does that, I'd also just say, if you're on Instagram, which you obviously are because you've sent this through, and we can maybe chuck up a post, but I personally don't have a spare release aid for you to lend or anything like that. But rather than go and spend $400 on a back tension or something just to go, oh, I actually hate that. I'm sure you could chuck a post up and say, does anyone here in Australia just have a release aid that I can borrow? I know Brad Smith has sent me stuff in the past, which is just a testament to him as a human to try. And then I just sent it back after going, hey, this isn't going to work for me. Or thanks very much. I've now seen that this is what I need to buy, and then go and buy it. Do you know what I mean? So there's plenty of good hunters out there, plenty of good humans in the industry. And I'm sure that we can get you hooked up with a couple to try in the near future, so that hopefully, your target panic burden can sort of be resolved a little bit faster.
Yeah, I think another group probably to try is the Hunting Australia Facebook page as well. Like, there's plenty of good guys and girls in there where I'm sure if you chuck something up, I think that's got 100,000 followers nowadays. So I'm sure there's going to be someone that would happily send you a release aid to try. So probably a good one to pop something into there. And I'm sure you'll definitely get a response from someone that's happy to send you a release aid, or you probably get inundated with people that are happy to send you a release aid to try. So, just a thought there. But yeah, as Ayden was saying, I shoot a cut down Scott Ascent to one finger. And I feel with just the target panic side of things, like a back tension or a hinge, it's often where people turn to get over it. And I think one of the big factors, like what Ayden was saying, and I had it too, where you approach the target and as you're coming in, the pin's diving into the target and you go whack, and you let go of, the clamps open and the D loop flies out and the arrow goes flying off, and you send this arrow almost randomly, not randomly, but probably less controlled than what you'd like, and it's very hard to group and very hard to control. Whereas, and I think that's because if you look at it, like a trigger release is almost black and white, like it's on or off. You know what I mean? Like there's no sort of grey middle area. Whereas with a hinge or a back tension, like there's a lot of, like it's working on that arc, and it's often, it sort of goes in with, as I was describing earlier, your pin's floating around. And you get very sort of comfortable with your pin floating around rather than being stressed that, it's off. And then, it's coming back in, bang. Oh, shit, it wasn't actually properly on it. Whereas I find with, like I was saying before, like my pin sort of floats, and like, yes, it's floating in like not a controlled way, but it's sort of, back and forth. Like it's not necessarily right on the dot all the time. But yeah, it's in a very small area. And then even plenty of times where you think that you're off like a couple of inches or whatever, you go and, you've sunk that 10 or 11 ring or whatever. I don't really do 3D shoots or archery. I did my first one the other day, but trying to use the analogy, like you're actually a lot closer than what you think. And if it was an animal, like you've perfectly shot the heart out of it, and or you've hit that dot or, whatever. And so I think it's because it has that, like, it's a surprise almost, even now, like very, even with very good people that you shoot all the time and stuff, like it's never not a surprise with a hinge or a back tension where it's like, I know exactly the moment it's going to go off, and I think that just takes away a bit of that target panic because it's always that surprise. And for me and my confidence with shooting, it's done wonders. And like I said, now I just only shoot a hinge, and to the point that it feels weird drawing a trigger just because I'm used to having my knuckles and hand almost vertical. Like I'd almost have to shoot a thumb rather than having it horizontal when you tuck your thumb in under with sort of a trigger release and use the index finger or whatever to set it off. So yeah, I can't recommend more. Back tension or a hinge. And I, to be honest, not being the most experienced person in the world, but talking to a lot of archers and hunters, it's probably the only way that you're going to get over your target panic because, it's what everyone seems to fall to and jumps on when they're having target panic. And like I said earlier, most people I know, whether it's for competition or whether it's for hunting, a lot of these guys are now shooting back tension and hinges for hunting and competition, but also at a minimum just for practicing with, and then they may use a trigger when they're actually out there hunting. So can't more strongly recommend a hinge or back tension. I shoot a Scott Ascent, but there's millions of different types nowadays. Do your research, but also I'm sure someone is going to be lovely enough to send you one if you reach out into the greater community.
Alrighty, legends, as you're hearing this, we are over in Montana in the United States, and between James and I, we have 6 tags, which is absolutely epic. We are hopefully in amongst whether it's bull elk, pronghorn, or mature mule deer bucks. James and I have been hunting for a few days now with a month worth of hunting and traveling to keep us pretty busy. So If anyone wants to send us any FAQs or any messages, we are obviously away, going to be out of service throughout September, but we will get back to you all when we're in Australia at the beginning of October and sort of sit down, and I'm sure we'll be inundated, but please don't think we're rude. We are just preoccupied with the rut and bugling bull elk and hopefully some early season white mule deer and white-tailed deer and maybe even a roaming pronghorn. So thank you very much for your support, and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
Just to try and keep you guys entertained during that period, as I'm sure a few of you may have seen in the last couple of months and weeks, we've had our awesome NT adventure come out on our YouTube channel. That is the Twin Elements YouTube channel, where we first started with Honey Hole, which is a buffalo film, and then we've gone into our 4-part Bantang film, which is super action packed. Got a heap of feedback about it from everyone. They've absolutely loved it. The cinematography, all the wildlife. The NT is a very, very special spot and holds a very special spot in our heart. It's a place we endeavour to get to every single year because you just have such a fantastic time, not only with the hunting, but just experience everything. Like, life is great when you're in the NT. So, there's a ton of footage there. And it also relates to a lot of the podcasts you've recently just listened to with hunting bantang and hunting bedded boars. So make sure to jump over to the YouTube and check them out if you haven't already. I know a fair few people, someone messaged me that day being like, it's the 6th time I've watched the part 3 and part 4 pig hunt, just because there's so much action and people absolutely loved it. So make sure you subscribe. Ayden and I have a ton of hunts and videos coming out in the future. Especially after this US trip, we're going to have, I don't even know, probably 20 or 30 hunts that we'll have filmed and ready to go on the YouTube. So, make sure to subscribe there. We are going to be putting in a lot of effort in the next 6 months to get all them ready and try and get them out. So, make sure to subscribe there. And as always, please share it with your mates. We're just trying to grow that platform. So if you guys can subscribe and share it, we would really appreciate it.
As a listener of this podcast, you guys can be rewarded when shopping on our Twin Elements website. Simply by using the code The Twin Elements Podcast, you can receive 10% off any print orders. So James and I have worked pretty hard to edit around 40 of our best prints or images that we think will resonate with you guys and gals, our listeners of the podcast. And when we say there's truly something for everyone, there really is. Each one of those print purchases directly support us here at Twin Elements and just allow us to go and do these magnificent trips and adventures. And it's great for us, it's great for you, but it also is really nice to see these prints up in people's homes, offices, and we love getting the feedback on them. Obviously, if anyone wants any prints updated or accessible, please just send us a DM as well, because we're often able to do these as customizable prints up to a huge array of sizes. A lot of the prints in the website are set as like A4, A3, A2 sizes, but we can print up to 1.5 meters in length on the largest size or ratio. So, something that we're very proud of, and hopefully we can get more and more prints into your guys' houses that support us.
As always, thank you very much for supporting the podcast. Ayden and I do really appreciate it for all you guys that tune in every week. We love getting all the messages. We love bumping into you guys. It was just the other day we bumped into a couple of young lads in Airlie Beach that came over and reached out and said, "Oh, we love the podcast. We listen every week." Which for Ayden and I, it's awesome to see that community and how widespread it's got now. And it's really important for us to give back to hunting that's given us so much. And so we just want to keep growing that community. And we just thank you guys so much for the support, for subscribing, reviewing, and rating the podcast. So, we really, really do appreciate it. And hopefully you guys continue to learn from us and, we can just grow as one. So thank you very much, guys. And we'll catch you next time on the Twin Elements podcast.